Shalom. This week we are reading Parshat Balak. And in Balak is perhaps the key to a mystery that is very unique and special. For example, part of the mystery is the Nobel Prize. Now, there have been 900 Nobel Prize winners awarded, and 20% of them have gone to people of the Jewish faith. Now, the Jews are, by conservative estimates or even liberal estimates, less than 0.2% of the population of the world, and yet they're getting 100 times that representation on the Nobel Prize. And people, sociologists, have tried to understand where it comes from. Perhaps it comes from this week's Parsha, the story of Balak, the story of Bilam. As we know, Bilam was a great prophet for the nations of the world, and the king of Moab, a man named Balak, was very afraid of the impending approach of the Israelites, and he wanted to somehow get rid of them, but he knew that militarily he couldn't do it because they had already defeated two powerful kings, Sihon of the Amorites and Og from the Bashan. So he figured, I'll try something else. I'll invite this fellow Bilam, who is known as a great prophet. In fact, according to Jewish sources, he was as great a prophet as Moses himself. I'll invite this fellow Bilam, and he will come and he will curse this people, the Jewish people. The plan doesn't work because Bilam, being an honest prophet, while he was not a righteous man by any account, he was quite evil, as a matter of fact. He wanted to curse, but a professional is a professional, and a prophet knows that if the prophecy is not accurate, it's not a proper prophecy, and he knew that he had to say what God would put into his spirit, and God put into his spirit to bless the Jewish people. And Bilam came, and Balak took him to an overlook, and he saw the people, and he blessed them. Balak got upset. I brought you here to curse them, not to bless them. Let's go to another overlook. So they go to a second place, and they go to a third place, and each time the same result. It's not a curse, it's a blessing. And then one has to understand, what was the thought? I mean, if the curse is not going to be given, if he's going to bless them, what difference does it make if they see them from this side or from that side? All of them, part of them? Is it really dependent upon the quality of the view? That's kind of hard to understand. A further question is that if you read through the book of Numbers, the whole book is telling us stories from the third Parsha in the book about the sins of Bnei Yisrael, starting with the fact that they started to complain about the manna from heaven. It wasn't good enough. They wanted fish, they wanted vegetables, they wanted meat, and so they got it, and they were punished. They're complaining, and they're upset. And then, of course, the worst of the sins of the book of Numbers, they sent the spies, 12 of them, to the land of Israel. 10 came back and said, it's a terrible place. We won't be able to succeed in going there. It's the wrong choice. And they made the whole people reject the land that God wanted to take them into, and they all cried, and because of that they were doomed to wander in the desert for 40 years. And then the week after that we read about the rebellion of Korach, the disunity, and it was so severe that God had to open up the earth and have Korach and all of his people get swallowed up. So you read these stories and you say, these Israelites, they're not so good. They keep messing up. What's the deal? How come Bilam comes and tells us how wonderful the Jews are, how amazing the Jews are, and I read all these stories about how misbehaving they are the whole way through. So it's a question, and I think the answer lies in a fundamental difference between the way Bilam values life and sees as the purpose of life, and the way the Jews value life and see as the purpose of life. To correct the incorrect question that Shakespeare put in the mouth of Hamlet, who said, to be or not to be, that is the question. That is not the question. The question is to be or to do. Is the purpose of life to achieve status, or is the purpose of life to continually do and do and do until we're finished on this planet? And that's a big question, and many people choose the former. They choose status. I want to be a lawyer, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be this, that, or the other thing. And then what happens when you achieve it? Take a look at some of these Hollywood celebrities who have status and wealth that the rest of us can only dream of. And we would say, boy, if that happened to me, if I had all that stuff, I'd just be the happiest person on earth. And you look at these people and you see they're depressed, they're abusive, they're using substance abuse, there's tremendous trouble. How does that happen? Because some of these people, their goal was to achieve status. Now, a person who is very talented and dedicated will achieve status by being excellent at what they do, without a doubt. They'll put in the work. But once they get there, what's left? Whereas the person who lives life as a never-ending chain of doing, seeing things that need to be fixed and saying, I can fix that, and then continuing to fix them, well, that is a life that never grows tired. That is a life of joy and happiness and excitement from day to day all the way through till after 120 years. And you can see this in the difference between Moses himself and Bilam. For example, when Moses speaks prophecy to the people, we don't even know who he is. It just says in the Bible, God spoke to Moses saying, and then Moses says to the people. So we know his name, but that's it. We just know that God spoke to him and he said to the people what God told him to say. End of story. But when Bilam issues his blessings to the people, his prophecies, he has a little introduction, at least from the second time on. He says, the speech of Bilam the son of Beor and the man whose vision is especially pertinent, is especially strong, however you want to translate that phrase. He gives a little introduction about his status. His status. Because for Bilam, status is everything. Where a person is the main thing. But for Moses and for the Jewish people, it's not where a person is, it's where they are headed. It's what are they going to continue to do into the future. So therefore, that's a huge fundamental difference. And my friends, this is a key to living a successful and fulfilled life. You can be a famous actor, but if you do not love the art of acting, if you do not relish each new script, each new part that comes to your hands, and you get tired of it because you've already done everything you need to do, so then you've focused on status. But if you love those parts and love those challenges and love the art, well, then you will never grow tired. We find a Mishnah, a rabbinical writing in the chapters of the Fathers, which states that there are 3 character traits of Abraham and 3 opposite traits of Bilam. Abraham had a good eye, he had a humble spirit, and he had very modest soul, a modest soul. And Bilam was the opposite. He had a bad eye or an evil eye. In other words, he looked with jealousy on people who were as successful or who had status to compare with his own. And he had a wide soul, which means he needed lots of physical pleasures and money and all that stuff. V'ruach gvoha, and he had a tremendously oversized ego. And so that might explain why Bilam is saying, well, if I want to curse them, because in my mind, the value of a person or a people is in their status, so I will find an angle where they look bad, and I will then be able to curse them based on their bad appearance and their damaged status. And so the first overlook didn't work. So let's try another angle, and that didn't work. So let's try a third angle where we can only see a part of them, and maybe that part will be the worst part, and then from that I'll be able to curse them. In other words, for Bilam, the whole thing is status. What Bilam doesn't understand was that Moses already raised this question with God himself at the burning bush. When the burning bush, when Moses saw the burning bush that was not consumed, and God spoke to him and told him he's going to go and bring the people out of Egypt, Moses asked a very powerful question. He said, the people are slaves in Egypt. They are also worshiping idols while they are there. They don't have any status. They don't seem to have any holiness to them. They seem to be just as defiled spiritually as the Egyptians are. So in what merit will they deserve to be redeemed and brought forth from Egypt? And God says to them, to Moses, you're looking at their status. Forget their status. Look at their deeds. Look at what they wish to accomplish. Look at their dreams. Look at their hopes. Look at the world they wish to create and to share with all of humanity. In other words, says God to Moses, when you bring them out from Egypt, this is the literal answer, they will serve me upon this mountain. In other words, they have a future merit. They're going to come to Mount Sinai and receive the Torah. And the Torah is teaching us that life is about the doing, not about the being. It is to be or to do, choose to do. And therefore, no matter how they look now, even if Bilam would find an angle that shows them looking bad, even if we have the whole book of Numbers telling about all of the sins and all of the flaws and all of the imperfections, that's status. Status is not important in God's eyes. What is deeds, dreams, and directions. May we all have inspiring dreams and directions and dedicate our lives to constantly doing. Follow your passion. Follow what you love to do. Forget about being, because being only comes from actions. And when you keep the actions going, you never lose faith, you never grow tired, your life is inspired and the world benefits, and who knows, maybe you'll get a Nobel Prize.